I'm going to share with you an AI agent I've created to produce and publish POV-style videos that are racking up millions of views. Even better, I'll walk you through how to automate the entire process using AI and no-code tools. A few days ago, I was doom scrolling on TikTok, wasting time instead of building something meaningful. Then I stumbled across a page with barely 15 videos, but over 400,000 subscribers. Their secret? POV videos. I dug deeper and discovered they were automating most of the process with AI. Intrigued, I tested every tool I could find and built a system of my own. Now, I'm excited to show you how to create a system that handles everything for you, from brainstorming ideas to hitting publish. By the time we're done, you'll have a setup that churns out videos 24/7. Set up this workflow once and let AI do the heavy lifting while you watch your channel grow. Here's an example. I gave it the theme Famous People Throughout History. The system generates detailed prompts, which are then fed into an image and video model to create visuals. It also sends them to a sound effects model for background music before stitching everything together into a complete video. Finally, it publishes the finished product to the social media channels of your choice. All of this happens fully automated, running daily or even hourly if you prefer, and it's completely customizable to any niche you want. The best part? Since we're using no-code tools, anyone can do this, even if you're a complete beginner. I've got some exciting news to share too. I'm launching a brand new community that'll be the ultimate hub for diving deep into AI, automation, and making money online. As an early member, you'll be a founding member and unlock some exclusive perks. I've put together a file that you can find in our community's templates folder. Just head over there and click on the Google Drive link. Once you've got it, you can upload it straight to n8n in the Import File section. In just one click, you'll have the whole workflow ready to roll, tailored to help you out. All you'll need to do is add your own credentials, and you're all set. I've got your back. To make this as seamless as possible, I've curated all the resources and prompts you'll need for this lesson in our community. You'll find the link in the description. Oh, and if you're already vibing with this, hit that like button and subscribe real quick. It's the easiest way to support the channel and lets me know you're along for the ride. Here's how it works. We'll set up 3 agents. First, the Ideas Agency generates video concepts for you. Next, the Production Agency automates the creation of those videos on a regular schedule. Finally, the Publishing Agency takes the finished videos and posts them daily. Together, they form a hands-off system that keeps your content flowing. Let's kick things off with the Ideas Agent, powered by ChatGPT. Here's the catch. ChatGPT is only as good as the instructions you feed it. A lazy prompt like, "Give me video ideas," will spit out mediocre results. Instead, we're crafting a precision prompt to extract pure gold. I've got one ready for you. It's waiting on the community page, with a link in the description. Head to the community page, copy the prompt, and paste it into ChatGPT. Next, personalize it. Tweak the number of video ideas, niche, theme, target audience, and tone. This ensures the ideas align perfectly with your channel. Now for the fun part, make it your own. The trick is specificity. Play around, experiment, and soon you'll have a treasure trove of concepts ready to go. One pro tip: don't request more than 10 ideas at once, or the quality starts to dip. Once you've got your ideas, copy the results into a Google Sheet template. Later, our production agent will use this to decide which concepts to bring to life. To save you time, I've shared the Google Sheet template in the community. Just head there, click File, then make a copy, and it'll save to your Google Drive. While you're in the community, check out the chapter on free or budget-friendly tool alternatives. It's perfect if you want great results without shelling out for premium options. And there you have it. Your Ideas Agent is locked, loaded, and spitting fire. If this is already igniting your imagination, smash that like button and subscribe. It keeps me motivated to bring you more, and trust me, I've got plenty up my sleeve. We're now ready to set up our production agency. This is the heavy hitter. We're taking those ideas and turning them into polished POV videos, no camera required. It's a beast of a process, but I'll break it down step by step so it's as easy as assembling IKEA furniture, minus the missing screws. Our main tool? n8n, a no-code automation platform that ties everything together like a digital puppet master. First, head to n8n.io and sign up. A link is in the description. It's free to start, though you might want their cloud version for simplicity. Still cheap as chips. Once you're in, click Create Workflow. The interface looks like a techie's playground. Nodes, lines, inputs, but don't panic. It's just a visual way to tell tools what to do. Think of it as dragging blocks in a video game to build something cool. The automation workflow here has basically 3 parts to it, right? So there is this input, which is what we are feeding this automation workflow, which would be the video topic in our case. There is this blue area, which is all about the configuration of us being able to generate the prompts, generating the images from those prompts, generating the videos coming from those images to animate them, and generating the sounds, which serve as our background music in this case. And then, for the final portion, these nodes basically just go through all of those elements and put them together to get to the final video. Let's create the trigger machine. We want this running on its own, so add a schedule trigger node. Click the plus sign, search schedule, and drop it in. You can set this as anything for now. You can just leave it as a trigger that happens once every day, so that's okay. Then, the node that you want to set up after that would be the Google Sheets node, so just search for that and click on it. And then you want to get the action, Get Rows in Sheet. Once you add that, you will see this interface by n8n. I'll explain how it works, in case it's your first time doing any, because it is quite simple. It's always just at the left side. You will have the input to these nodes, so all of the elements coming in from a previous step would serve as the input, which you will see in a bit. You have the config, which are all the configuration steps specific to that node, and every node is mostly different. And then you have the output, which shows you, with that config and using that input, what is now the output that it provides and passes on to the next node. So, very simple, and you can see in Google Sheets, it adopts the same design of working. For most of these nodes, you also need to set up your credentials. For Google Sheets, if you just click on Create New Credential, it already has a Sign In with Google button, so you can just click that, and you'll be able to connect to your Google Sheets without any hassle. Then, once you have that credential set up, just look for the document or the Google Sheet that you were working on previously. For me, it would be this one, and then from that list, choose the sheet where your information is. If you haven't changed the template, it would be in Sheet 1, and then you want to add a filter so that you can guide this node to look for a specific row, one that says this column, which is production, is set to For Production. That's important because if you go back to our template here, it will basically grab this first row, which says For Production, and then later, once we're done with this idea, the automation will mark it as Done, and then it will be skipped for the succeeding runs so that you don't repeat that same idea every day. The last thing to this setup here is, for option, click Return Only First Matching Row, and if you click on Test Step, that should now give you only one item instead of all of the items here that are marked as For Production, so it will give you the very first one at the top of the list. So, that's all good. The next thing you want to add here would now be what's referred to as a basic LLM chain, so just go ahead and click on that option. And then what this basic LLM chain will do, once you rename it, is it will actually be used to generate titles. By titles, we're essentially referring to the text that appears here at the top for every single clip that will be generated later on. So, to set that up properly, just change this setting to Define Below. And then what you need to do is drag this idea attribute right into the text field. And what that basically does is it's going to feed this language model this exact text as a prompt for processing. Then, in terms of what it will do with that prompt, you'll need to add a system prompt here. And under the message section, if you navigate back to our community page, there's already a piece of text available there specifically for the system prompt labeled Title Generation Prompt, OpenAI, which you can simply copy. And then if you return here, change that first to Expression and just paste it right into this section. If I expand that for you, you'll basically be able to see that it's just a detailed and structured prompt that will guide this AI model around the kind of output that we're aiming for, which we'll showcase in just a bit. The last thing you'll want to set up on this screen would be to toggle this switch on, labeled Require Our Output as a Specific Format. Before we can actually proceed to click on Test Step, you'll notice that there are still two components that we need to configure here fully. One is the model, which is essentially the chat model that we'll be utilizing to power this AI system, and there are plenty of options here already provided, so feel free to pick whichever one you're most comfortable with using. OpenAI is the most commonly used one, so we'll stick with that, and for this one, the only thing you need to set up is to connect your credential to it, which, if you haven't done that yet, just click on Create New Credential, and the only thing you'll need is to grab your API key here. To get that API key, simply go to this URL where you can sign up for OpenAI and also generate your API key by clicking on Create New Secret Key. So you can just paste it here, and you'll be fully set up. Don't forget to add some credits to OpenAI or you won't be able to use it. Just click away from that, and then for the output parser, what this will basically do is ensure that the output of your AI adheres to the structure you need it to follow. So, if you just click on Item List Output Parser, then click on Add Option, and if you click on Number of Items, just set that to 2 for now. Later on, we'll be adjusting that to 5, but just for testing purposes, let's stick with 2. And there you go. This node is now completely set up. If you double-click on that and click on Test Step, what it's now done is taken this idea, which is you wake up in a spaceship with an AI and output a scene title, 2 of them, in fact, which, if you read these carefully, are quite well aligned to what would have happened supposedly. If you take a look at our final workflow here, that is basically the input stage now completed. So the next step is to set up these generation nodes so that we can produce the final videos and the final sound effects that will eventually merge together for the completed video. You can also just clean this up a bit, and if you want to add a note, just right-click and add a sticky note, resize that accordingly to fit. You can change the color here if you'd like, and if you double-click, you can actually modify the contents of the text there. Now let's extend this to create those generation nodes. For this next one, you want to search for the OpenAI node here, and for the action, click on Message a Model, because what this will basically do, if you look at our final workflow, is, using those scene titles, it will generate a more detailed prompt, which our image generation model, which will be Flux in this case, will use to create those images. So, under the parameters here, your credential should be set up there. For the model, choose the one you're most comfortable with. At the time of this tutorial, n8n mini is sufficient for our case. And under the text, this is basically going to be your prompt for this model. You can just go back to our community, and under the system prompt for generate prompts, just copy this whole thing, make sure it's changed to expression, and then paste that in. So now, if you expand that using this button, you can see that, once again, it's just a guide for our OpenAI model on what it needs to do, and there's a lot of information here around some specs about it. But you can note that there's a green area here, which basically feeds it that scene title, which, if you look at the right, is looking familiar. Then we have another dynamic text here, which is coming from our Google Sheets node, and for this specific scenario, it is translating to this: Luxurious Pal Golden Decor Servant. So, where is that from? That actually came from ChatGPT, our ideas agent. So if you look at our environment prompt, this is the text that it is grabbing. And this is just important so that even if you generate, let's say, 5 clips for this one idea, they have an environment prompt which is going to make it more consistent across those 5, or else it's going to be a bit different in feel if you don't have something like this. So if you click away and click on Test Step, you can now see that in the output, it expanded that scene title to an image prompt, which starts with first-person view, POV, GoPro shot of hands, etc. And then there's another one here, which we are now ready to feed into our image model so that it can create an image based on this content. So that is the generate prompt step. The next thing that we want to set up are all the nodes related to generating images. So we'll do that by extending this and looking for an HTTP request node. You can just name that text to image, change the method to post, and under this URL, we'll need to send this request to a URL that allows us to call upon other image models. There are a couple of these, but for this tutorial, we'll be using a service called PyAPI, which, if you just copy this URL, you'll see they have a lot of video and image models here that you can play with. So just go ahead and sign up, and we'll go back to this to get our key in just a bit. But just to finish the setup of this first, under URL, you can just scroll down to this Flux Generate Image area and copy this URL, and this one needs to be exactly typed as well, paying attention to capitalizations, or else it wouldn't work. just go ahead and click on Send Headers, and under Name, just type it in as XAPI key, again paying attention to the capitalizations, or else it wouldn't work. For the value, we'll go back to that in a bit, but under Send Body, just toggle that on, change this one to raw, under Content Type, type out Application JSON, again paying attention to capitalizations, and under Body, you would now go back to our community and just copy this in, change that to expression, paste it, and if you just expand this and quickly show it, it's basically a command to PyAPI to use this model, which is Flux in our case, an image generation model where the task is converting text to an image, and the prompt, you can see a dynamic value here, which we're passing, comes from our previous node. So that is now fully set up, except that you, of course, would need an API key to use PyAPI services. To get your API key, just head back to the PyAPI workspace and under API keys, click on Generate, or, in my case, since I already have it, I can click on Reset and then copy that into this area, which you should treat like a password, or else people will be able to use your account. So for me, I'll just reset this after this tutorial. Now you can click on Test Step, and if your code is 200, that means it's successful, and if you check the status, that actually tells you that it is pending. And so Flux is now hard at work generating those images. So we'll get those images in just a sec, but since it does take some time to generate, you would want to add in a wait node, and at least now, for the sake of testing, just set it to something like 1 second. Of course, later, we'll set that to something like 2 minutes to give time for the model to generate, and just click on Test Step. But now, for us to get those images, you just need to add another HTTP request node, but just to make it faster, you can select this previous node and click Ctrl+C and copy that and attach it here. If you double-click on that, you can change the method from POST to GET, and then the only thing you need to change here is type in CHI-SOM and grab the task ID from the wait module and put it here. Make sure there is no space in between those for it to work, and then you can see there's a sample output here already. Then under Send Body, just toggle that off, and now if you click on Test Step, you can see that the status is now completed, which means the images were generated. If you scroll down, there's a second row here, which is also completed, and if you scroll to find an image URL, and if you copy that URL into your browser, you can now see the generated image, which we will be animating as a video in just a bit. If you just rename this to Get Image and go back, then your Generate Images step is now done. So now it's time to animate those images and turn them into videos. So now you would need another HTTP request node, which you can just copy with this one as well to make it much faster, and then just link that to here. If you double-click on that, just go ahead and rename that to Image to Video to make it easy to understand what it does, and then everything here is actually going to stay the same, except for the command that you will be passing on to PyAPI, because this time, we'll be using a video model, which is Kling AI. The good news is PyAPI also offers them, so this is going to be much simpler. So just go ahead and copy this whole script from our community, and under Body, just change that to Expression, and go ahead and paste that. So if you expand this, what it basically tells PyAPI to do is to use the model Kling, and using this prompt and this image URL, which are dynamic values since they're in green, you can see here at the right, the value being passed is actually the image URL that we just generated from before. So you can have a play at this, have a read on their documentation on what those are. But I did want to call out this mode because right now it's set up as standard. But if you want the best quality, just change that to Pro, and that will give you much better results on your video generation. But if you need to just test things out or debug things during the course of this tutorial, it's much faster to generate videos in the standard mode. So now if you click on Test Step, the output will now show you the status of pending, which means that Kling is hard at work turning your image into a video. And so since videos actually take quite long to process, you can just add another wait node here, which again, for our testing, we'll change this later, but change that to 1 second for now and click on Test Step. Then, for you to get the video, just copy this Get Image node and then connect that here. And then, if you open that, you can see that it's actually pulling the right task ID already from the previous wait node. So if you just click on Test Step, it should get for you the status of your video generation task, which you can see is still processing. So my tip here is, if you go to your Pi API workspace and then navigate to Kling under Task History, you'll be able to see the latest tasks that you have assigned to Kling in there, and you can see in my time, it actually took around 5 minutes from the time the task was created to the time that it got completed. So, to generate that video, it took roughly 5 minutes. But once you see that the status is now set as success here, you can just go back to your Get Video node, which, by the way, you can just rename it so that it doesn't get confusing, Get Video, and then Test Step again. You can see the status is now also saying completed, and if you scroll down, you'll be able to find this video URL, which if you copy again to your browser, you'll be able to just preview how that looks like, and that is looking quite good. So now, finally, the only element remaining would be the background sounds in our video. So what you want to do is just drag this and extend it and look for the HTTP request node, and then just rename that to text to sound, and then change this to post. If you go back to our community, the service that we'll be using to generate the sound would be n8n Labs. So if you just copy the URL here, paste that here, and then toggle send headers as on, and under the header, just type in XI API key. Again, paying attention to the capitalization there. And then for the API key, we'll get that in a bit, but under send body, just set that again as raw, set content type as application/JSON, and for that body, just copy whatever is in our community here and make sure that's set as expression and paste that there. So, just to explain what this is, it's quite simple. It tells n8n Labs that this is the duration in seconds that we want. Prompt influence is how much n8n Labs will adhere to this prompt that we're giving it, which we're just telling it to not generate any voices for it, and then we just provide the same prompt that we did previously, but just truncating it a bit because n8n Labs has a 450 character limit. So now, the only thing remaining for this config is this API key, which you can get by signing up to n8n Labs through this link, and once you're in your dashboard, just click on your profile here on the left and click on API keys, click Create API key, and then just accept that and click Create, and then just go ahead and copy that to clipboard and paste that in here. So now if you click on Test Step, and once that's done, you can see that it provided me with these audio files, which you can preview by clicking on View, and by playing it here, you click on Music, Play. So that is sounding really good. So now, for us to make use of those files, we actually need to store them somewhere, which, if you look at our n8n workflow here, what I've done is use Google Drive to store them. There are other options in n8n, but I just found that Google Drive is the easiest. So with that, just continue by clicking on plus, click on Find Google Drive, and then click on Upload File as the file action, so you can just rename this to something like Upload MP3. This node is actually simple to set up, but the hardest part is probably creating a new credential for Google Drive because, unfortunately, they don't have an easy single sign-on to do this. But instead, you'll need to provide it with a client ID and client secret. So, to get your client ID and client secret, it's actually still very simple. Okay, so now that you would have your client ID and client secret, you have here a note that tells you to make sure that you've enabled the Google Drive API in your Cloud Console, and for you to do that, if you just go back to console.cloud.google.com, and then under Enabled APIs and Services, click on Enable APIs and Services, and then just search for Google Drive. And this Google Drive API is what you want to turn on. You can see I already have it enabled from my side, so there, once that's set up, your credential should now appear here under the Credential to Connect with area. Now the remaining steps here are just to give your file a name, which what you can just do is go to Schema and drag the task ID there to give it a unique ID, and then just type .mp3 so that the file extension is correct, and you can see here an example output of what that will be. Then, under your parent folder, choose where you want to put the generated music in. For me, it will be this one, and just click on Test Step. And you can see it's successful, and it provided you with a couple of pieces of information here, which, if you go to Schema, what's most important here is this web content link, which if you copy and paste to your browser, it's possible that it will deny you permission to access this file, and the reason why is because this file's permissions are currently set as restricted. This is why we need to add another Google Drive node, but now the action would be to share a file, which is this one. And here, basically, you just need to share that specific file that you just uploaded. So, if you select by ID and then drag this ID from that upload MP3 node into here, and under permission, if you click add, change that to writer and change that to anyone, and click on allow file discovery. If you click test step, what it basically did is change your file's share settings to be shared with anyone if they have the URL, which is what we need. So, if you just rename this to update access so that we know what it does, there, you are now well set up, and you have all the elements ready to create the final video. So now if you go back to our n8n workflow, you can see that the last step here is for us to put all of those elements together and merge them into one. So, for us to do that, you would want to extend this and just find a merge node, and then for the number of inputs, type in 4, and then click away, and now you can see that it is waiting for 4 inputs here. If you think about the final video we have here, the elements that are relevant would be the video itself, this title, and the background music, right? So we'll need to make sure that we have the title, which is this generate title. So just drag this point and drag it to the first input. You would have the video, which is coming from this node, and drag it to that. You have the background music, so drag this upload MP3 node and put it here. And then finally, you just need to make sure that this final node is connected there as well, so that this merge node would not run until this final node has been executed, which is important because we need to update the access permissions first before we can make use of this file. So, with all of those nodes connected, just double-click this and click on Test Step. You can see that there's an error here because it actually appended everything, but what we need to do is combine them, so just change the mode to Combine. And then in terms of how we'll combine them, we just use the position and then keep the number of inputs as 4. So if you click away, just make sure that those are properly linked again, in case they disconnected somehow, and then just double-click and Test Step. You can see it's just waiting for previous nodes to execute, and once those are done, it now provided me with 2 items, which is correct, and if I just look at the schema, it basically just aggregated everything that we had up until this point. So now, to make use of those elements, just need to find a code node, and you can just rename this to list elements. And for the code here, you can just go to our community, scroll down to this list elements code, and just copy that in. If you click on test step, what this basically did is list out your scene titles, list out the video URLs that were generated, and also the sound URLs because now we're getting them ready to combine into one video. Now, the second to last node that you need here is another HTTP request, and just name this render video, change that to post, and under URL. If you go back to our community here, what we'll actually do is use a service called Creatomate, which acts as our video editor in this case. So just copy this URL of theirs and paste it here, toggle send headers as on, and then, for this first one, type in authorization, taking note of the capitalization of the letters and making sure there's no spaces there. And then, for the value here, we'll be pasting our API key in just a bit, and then just add another parameter called content type. So just type it in, taking note of capitalizations as well, and under value, type in application/JSON. We want to send the body as well, so change that to raw. Content type will be application/JSON, and then for the body, we'll leave that for now and come back to it in a bit. But the last thing you want to set up here is under settings. Just toggle execute once as on, since for everyone, we want to just have one video. Now, how do we get the API key, and what do we send here in the body? So, to get that, just head to creatomate.com and click on Get Started to open your account. And once you're here, if you click on this ellipses and click on Project Settings, you'll be able to reveal your API key here, which you can just copy and paste into your n8n workflow here. But to make that work, you want to go to the very beginning of that API key and type in the word bearer with a capital B, and then click space followed by your API key. So that's important so that Creatomate will accept your request in their platform. Now, for the body, you'd want to scroll down in our community under Creatomate Render Video and just copy this whole thing, and then change that to expression and paste it in. So now if I open that, you can see that it's quite simple. There's a template ID here, and you have the 5 audio sources for the 5 clips we'll be stitching together. And here in the result, you can see it's already getting the 2 that we have generated. And later on, when we do 5, it'll be able to get those as well. Same with a video, and same with the text. So, these are just placeholders that are dynamic that we can pass on to Creatimate to stitch them together. But what's important is this template itself, because you need to set this up in your Creatimate account. If I navigate to mine and click on Templates, here you can see that I already have a template, and that is actually the one that we are using. And again, you can see the 5 text pieces here, which go to this title. You have the 5 videos, which I have sequenced one by one here, and the 5 audio files, which, again, we have sequenced one by one. So, overall, this will be a 25-second long video that puts all of those elements together, and you see I have some placeholders here as well. So, how do you create this template yourself? I've made this very simple. If you again go to Templates, click on New, and click on Start from Scratch, and then just click on 9x6 vertical, and then here, click on Source Editor, or click F12. And then what you want is to delete this and replace it with this piece of script under Creatimate, Create Template, which is quite long, but just copy those in and then paste it here. And then you'll be able to see that structure already start to take form. You might not have these assets, but that's completely fine, because these are just placeholders anyway. So, you can do that as a shortcut, or you can also just create this template by yourself since it's quite easy to do anyway. But the last thing that you want to get from Creatimate's dashboard is to click on Use Template, and then click on API Integration, and then just go ahead and grab that template ID, copy that, and then replace this template ID, which I have with yours, and now that's done. So, if you click on Test Step, you can see the output has now been accepted with a status of planned, which is great, and what's great about Creatimate is they also provide this URL where your final video will be. But if you just copy that to your browser, the video is probably not yet there because they're still creating it. But to complete this workflow, you would want to just add it to your Google Sheet. So just search for Google Sheets as a final node here and click Update Row in Sheet. Name that as Final Video Link, click on Rename, and then under Document here, just find the Google Sheet that you have been working with, and then choose the tab accordingly. For my case, it's Sheet 1. And then the column that you want to match on will be ID. And the ID that you are looking for is the ID from the very first Google Sheet node, which is this one. So, if you just drag that across, put that there, you can see it's red because it doesn't know which one to use. So to fix that, just replace this item piece and type in first with an open and close parenthesis, and that should fix it. And it's now correctly outputting ID1, which, to recap, corresponds to this specific row where the ID is 1. Now with that, it knows that this is the row to update. What you want to do is change this production column into done and change the publishing column to for publishing, and then this final output will now be under render video, this URL of the video, which you can put here. So now, if you click Test Step, you can see it succeeded, and if you go back to our Google Sheet, you can see that this tracker of ours has now been updated to done for producing the video, and the publishing step is now set to for publishing automatically, and it has the link to the final output, which, if you click on that, and if Creatimate has already completed the video, it will actually show you the video. Obviously, it only has the first 2 clips in there, and the rest of the video is blank because we've only generated the first 2 clips, which we can fix in just a bit. So, now that is the production workflow all complete. So, for you to test this fully, just remember to set the wait times appropriately. What I like to do is set this one for the video generation to be around 10 minutes, just so that it's safe, and then, for the image, just set it as 3 minutes. And that is usually enough time to give for the model to generate the images. Then, finally, for generate titles, if you double-click this output parser, just change the number of items from 2 into 5 so that it will generate 5 clips instead of just 2. So, now, if you click on Test Workflow and just wait for the whole workflow to finish, then we'll be able to get the final video link, all automatically generated. Okay, so with that workflow having run completely, you can now check your Google Sheet and see that the final output has been pasted here. And so if you just click that, you'll be able to watch your first fully automated POV video here, and there you go. That video was entirely created from scratch, just from a simple idea that came from ChatGPT, and the images, the videos, the text, and even the audio were all created by AI. I've also gone ahead and created another example here, which was provided by ChatGPT again. So this one is waking up on Mars after 100 years in cryosleep. So just imagine you have this workflow running every day, and it will create videos for you and also publish them, which is now the final step in our process because we will be setting up our publishing agency, which will take care of getting those videos and publishing them to our channel of choice every day. So if you go back to our n8n automation here, you can see I have this separate workflow here in the violet area that basically just consists of 4 nodes. So that's quite simple to set up. What you want to do is, in the same workflow, you can right-click and add a node and add another schedule trigger there. And for this one, just leave it as is. We can change that next time. The next thing you want is a Google Sheets node and find the action Get Row in Sheet. And then for this, you can just find the sheet that you are working with and the relevant tab within that Google Sheet, which is Sheet 1 in my case. And then for the filter, you should look for the Publishing column, this one, and filter for the rows that say For Publishing. Just to recap where that is, it is basically this column, and we're just going to ask n8n to look for the very first row that has a For Publishing attribute here already, and then add an option for Return Only First Matching Row and toggle that on. Now if you click on Test Step, it now returns to you that Cleopatra video that we had, and more importantly, this URL, which we will be using for our publishing. So now, just extend that and look for an HTTP request node, leave this as Get, and then, under URL, this is where you just drag your final output column from the Google Sheet and place it there, and leave the rest of the configuration here as OK. Then, if you click Test Step, it should now give you, under this binary section, the video file itself. So you can see this file type that was obtained is an MP4 extension with this file size, which is what we need because then, to finalize this publishing, we will just need to look for the YouTube node, specifically the Upload a Video action, which is this one. For the credential, you can just go ahead and create a new credential here, and for your client ID and client secret, you can paste the same ones that you had from Google Cloud Platform when you set up Google Drive just a while ago, and if you click on Save, then you should have a YouTube account credential fully set up here. Then, to set up some of our attributes here, under the title, that is basically the title of your video, you can just drag this idea column here from HTTP request, and you can see it provides an example there. For region code, provide what's most relevant, and under category name or ID, again, you can just choose whatever is relevant, and you can leave input binary field as data, and that is basically going to point to this file that we had just uploaded from the previous module. Finally, under options, go ahead and add a description, which will now serve as the caption of our YouTube video. So if I go back to my HTTP request, there is a caption attribute here, which I can just drag, and as an optional step, you can also set the privacy status as unlisted or private, so that when you upload this, it will actually be unlisted first before you publish it, which is always a good step to have. So if I click on Test Step, there you can see that there is an upload ID, and if I now go to YouTube, you can see that video being uploaded as we speak, along with the title that we just provided it, as well as the caption that came from our Google Sheet. So, now to publish this, you can just change the visibility from unlisted to public, or if you want it to auto-publish without any human intervention, you can just set this to public, and that should upload those videos automatically, and that is the publishing step now done. Now your automation is complete, so just make sure to turn this toggle on so that the automation can be set to active, and also schedule these 2 triggers to the time of your choice. Alright, so if you found this valuable, do give a like or subscribe. It helps us a lot. And if, in case, you're interested in learning more about artificial intelligence, automation, and how to make money online, check out the community, the link in the video description.